BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Amy Canavan and this is the Scottish Football Podcast, keeping you up to speed with all the news, views and analysis you need. It's Tuesday the 7th of January and here's what's coming up today.
He's a left winger but he can play off the right. I've seen him score with both feet, and crucially he is the kind of player that Tulane is trying to get into the club. Fast, direct.
After a dismal run of form, can a new signing transform Aberdeen's stuttering season? As the transfer window gathers momentum, could there be news about a sensational return to Scottish football?
Kieran Tierney's obviously been heavily linked with the return. Is he one of the deals you want to do? You get any update for us there?
No.
Celtic manager Brendan Rodgers remains tight-lipped, but is Kieran Tierney about to return to his former club? And...
oh, what a chance! It's not finished yet, Canavan! 3-0! This game's done! St Johnstone are struggling. St Johnstone 0, Dundee 3.
problems galore in Perth, but where do Sunday's results leave things for the bottom six?
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
St Johnstone may be struggling, so am I at 6:30 this morning, though I am pleased to say dragging me out of this particular doldrum. And joining me on today's podcast is the Scottish football correspondent for The Times, Michael Grant, and former St Mirren and Falkirk midfielder Stephen McGinn. There's plenty to discuss with Michael and Stephen after a weekend which could well prove pivotal at the foot of the table. But before we get into that, let's start in the northeast, where Aberdeen, who have made their first signing of the January transfer window last night with the signature of Jeppe Okkels. The Danish winger has made the switch to Pittodrie from Preston on an initial loan until the end of the season. Let's start with yourself, Michael. What do you make of the move? Do you think this is an area that Aberdeen need to strengthen in?
Well, I'm going to start, Amy, with the most predictable joke of the day, which is, can this guy play centre-half? Because that's what Aberdeen does.
It is what they need. It is.
It really is what they need. And listen, what I'm told is that there are obviously efforts ongoing at the club to get defenders in maybe as quickly as the weekend, and that's much needed. Okkels, he looks exciting. You know, we all do the thing that supporters do when you get a new signing you don't know. You look him up and you look at footage, and of course that's kind of flattering, and it's inevitably it's a highlights reel. But this is a guy that Preston paid about 1.7 million for last summer, which, you know, in a Scottish terms, that would be an awful lot of money for a player coming in. So it's only a few months later. From an Aberdeen perspective, I'm encouraged by the point of view that he had played for Tulane before at Elfsborg, and really effectively. I mean, he averaged about 1 goal and 4, but 30 in 120 appearances. He's a left winger, but he can play off the right. I've seen him score with both feet, and crucially, he is the kind of player that Tulane is trying to get into the club. Fast, direct, you know, can play on counter-attacking moves. So, listen, on the face of it, he looks an encouraging one, but as I said at the start, Aberdeen need other areas of the team addressed quickly as well.
As Michael mentions there, Stephen is someone that Jimmy Clean knows well, having managed them at Elfsborg. We use the phrase credit in the bank quite a lot. Does Tulane have this, given the start that the Dons made? Should it very much be we trust in Tulane's process when it comes to signings, and we do go for guys that he has worked with before? Is that the model perhaps that Aberdeen should follow?
Yeah, absolutely, and especially because he's had 6 months at the level of football, and he's first thing, as Michael said, from the outsider looking in, you're thinking, does he go straight away and get a centre-half in the first week of the window? Does he maybe add a bit of legs to the midfield partnership of Nielsen and Shinnie? But he's went, and obviously a winger's became available that he's maybe thought hasn't really quite worked out for him, but he could be a sensation at this level. He could really improve my team. So ultimately, I mean, the cliche is that January isn't a window. It's a notoriously hard window, but if someone comes available that you know quite well. Now you know the level. If you think that makes your team better, then it's something you have to do.
It's a tricky window, Michael. You sort of alluded to it there. The need for a centre half is blatant to the eye for anyone who's been watching Aberdeen in recent times. What sort of activity? How much activity do you see Aberdeen trying to complete this window?
Oh, I think they will be busy in this window. I mean, I could see 3 or 4 coming in. They need defenders. They need centre defenders. They need possibly cover at fullback. They may need a striker as well because Sockler is going to be out for a while. It seems like Kevin Nisbet is staying, but we're not sure. It's season-long loan. They might need a keeper on loan as well because Mitov is struggling. So yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that Aberdeen have got a lot of work to do. They've been linked with Alexander Jensen, who's another guy with from a Swedish club that Tilleen will know well. They've been linked with Kristos Tobers, the Latvian captain. He's a centre half stroke number 6 midfielder. So again, both of those make sense. So yeah, listen, I think Aberdeen will be busy in this week and certainly in the next 2 or 3.
It's 10 games now without a win, Stephen, which sort of seems unfathomable just a matter of months ago. How do Aberdeen dig themselves out of this rut? Because it is now a rut that they are in. Jimmy Tilleen sort of mentioned it at the weekend that they have like problems to solve here. They need to fix things. How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the obvious thing to say, but you just have to go and stop the rot. And you look at the fixture list and it's Hearts and Rangers coming up. You're thinking, could this get any easier? 2 of our notoriously hard fixtures, but sometimes that might make it a bit easier than, say, in the past few weeks. They've had games like Ross County at home where the fans are just turning up and thinking, right, this is where we stop the rot, this is where we win. They showed signs of the first half of the half season. In the second half at Motherwell, they're flying forward, committing bodies, playing with a renewed energy. And signings can do that. And I think they need that. At the halfway point, take away win and run, lose and run. If you'd offered that to Dave Cormack, that they would be where they are in the league, they'd be competitive, the fans would have total faith in the manager he's appointed. I think they'd have taken that. But they have to stop the rot, and in one of these next 2 big games, I think that's the opportunity to do it.
They sure do. Elsewhere in Scottish football, of course, the rumour mill is in full flow, and the much talked about return to Celtic for Kieran Tierney is rumbling on, dominating the headlines. Brendan Rodgers had some pretty strong words to say about fans cheering the former Celt's name while Greg Taylor was still doing his duties at the weekend there. Michael, what did you make about the comments? Can we sort of look into them? Can they give us any sort of clue as to where this Tierney saga is at?
I found the comments really interesting because they just seemed to come out of nowhere, and it was one of these ones that I wasn't at the match, but I'm led to believe that the line of questioning wasn't, were you unhappy about the fans chanting? This was very much Brendan Rodgers getting it off his chest that he was. I think it just seemed to really irritate him that while Taylor was getting treated for an injury, that this chant goes up for Kieran Tierney. I mean, Tierney obviously, huge figure in Celtic's recent modern history, hugely popular guy with the supporters, and you can understand the appeal to them of them seeing him again in the colours, But I think Rodgers was looking at it from almost like protecting his player. Greg Taylor's been a great servant to Celtic, and as a kind of model professional kind of thing. And I think it just was almost like on a human level that Rodgers thought this isn't fair. In terms of what it means for Tierney, whether he's coming or not, I don't suppose it makes any difference, but I think it's pretty clear that it's kind of well down the line. It's just a case of whether he signs a pre-contract to come in the summer or whether they can accelerate that and get him in now on a loan till the end of the year, end of the campaign.
Falkirk still saying your name, Stephen. Should Brad Spencer be worried?
I was a bit surprised. I mean, it's something that. The fact that fans are singing means it's a good day. Sometimes they're booing you directly.
That sounds like that's coming from personal experience.
Personal experience. I've had that a few. But I didn't really read into too much. My take on it was that the Celtic fans were really excited for him to come back, especially that particular section of the home support. Kieran Tierney really bought into what they were doing and had a relationship with them, and I think there was just excitement of a player that probably in the current market Celtic shouldn't be able to get. I mean, he's literally, they're getting him because the guy at heart is a Celtic fan. Because injuries or not, you look at squads round England with FFP, even as your backup left back, there's English Premier League clubs would pay him more than Celtic would pay him as a squad player. So I took the positives out of the fan support for Kieran Tierney.
There's plenty talk of exits at Celtic as well, isn't there, when it comes to Greg Taylor himself, Stephen Welsh, Alexandro Bernabe as well. For Taylor especially, and when he's hearing certain songs or whatnot from the stands, what sort of impact can that have on players, Stephen? The talk in the media, the talk in the stands. I think just at the weekend you sort of seen Virgil van Dijk actually come out and say that it didn't have an impact on Trent Alexander-Arnold's poor performance against Man United, but just how easy or otherwise is it to shut out that noise when it is so loud?
Yeah, I mean, I've only really experienced it like that once when Gus McPherson had told the St Mirren crowd when I think I was 21 that I didn't want to sign a new deal, that I wanted to leave. I knew in the background that the Watford move had come up, and I was disappointed at the time that he came out and said, because I'd obviously came through at St Mirren. The offer they'd given me, if they'd given me it 6 months previous to bring me in line with the first team players, then I'd have snapped his hand off for it. They'd allowed my contract to run. I was only playing every week in the Premier League for a couple £100, and then an opportunity came up to go to England, which no amount of money would have stopped me going down to Watford at that point. So I was disappointed with the timing of it, and we had 2 or 3 home games between the period of I wouldn't sign to, and I got dogs abuse from the stand across from the main stand. I mean, it was quite hard as a 21-year-old, but it's a kind of, you just have to go on with it. I think we won a couple of the games, and you just at the end, probably I think I did what Kieran Tierney do. We just shake hands with the opponent team and get down the tunnel and just get on with it.
Just get down the tunnel and get on with it. Not bad advice at all. Across the city, of course, speculation persisting as well. Ibrox club are being linked with a move for Nathan Patterson. Like Tierney, is he a player who perhaps just needs this fresh start again, Michael?
Listen, he needs to play, doesn't he? He needs game time, and I think that's his motivation for looking to see if he can get out of Everton for the rest of this season. He needs to get back into the Scottish team. He needs Steve Clarke to be able to watch him somewhere, whether that's Rangers or elsewhere. I'm not sure. I mean, Sean Dyche has said that he's not really looking to lose players at the moment because I think they're pretty stretched in terms of the squad at Goodison. I mean, you would argue that maybe a right back isn't the immediate priority for Rangers. Again, it's probably centre halves given the injury issues they've got. I don't know how long Tavernier's going to be out. I don't think the suggestion is it's very long. But also Ridvan Yilmaz has done really well there. I know he's on the wrong side for him, but he's looked pretty comfortable. So I'm not sure right back is really the priority. I guess the fans would quite like to see Patterson back, but I wouldn't have thought it's a priority, and the priority for him is wherever he's going to get minutes. Yeah,
you mentioned centre-half. Ryan Porteous' name has cropped up again in the last few days or so. Do you think that would make sense of a move for both player and club?
Well, he appears to be a little bit unsettled at Watford, doesn't he, and looking to get out. I think Hull City have been linked with him. Porteous' name, I mean, I was going to say love-hate. I'm not sure there was any love between Ryan and Rangers support when he was up here, but I mean, I know Rangers fans that say, listen, Porteous would be a good signing for us, that kind of character and strength, and maybe he could be a good fit. I mean, they've also been linked with Johnny Evans, who's 37, Northern Irish veteran. On one hand, you can see that making a bit of sense, whether it's remotely affordable, don't know. But again, Porteous, Johnny Evans, it's showing that Rangers' priority at the moment is centre half.
let's turn our attention now to the bottom half of the Premiership, and Aberdeen aren't the only side struggling for form. St Johnstone now firmly anchored to the foot of the table after a 3-1 home defeat to Dundee. Saints head coach Simo Valakari described their current predicament as very, very bad. It does make for grim reading, actually. Just 4 league wins so far, 8 games without a win. I was at McDiarmid Park on Sunday, and they were spooked and slaughtered in 22 minutes really against Dundee. Where, if anywhere, Stephen, do you see any sort of light for St Johnstone right now?
Well, the light I had for St Johnstone was back-to-back home games against St Johnstone, Hibs and Dundee. I was at McDiarmid Park for the Hibs game, and at the final whistle, with 10 in the second half with 10 men, St Johnstone had really dug in as a team, defended the box well, and apart from the brilliance of Dwight Gale, they would have got a 1-0 victory. And I thought there's lots to be positive about. The home fans were happy with what the team had gave at Simo Valakari tactically in the second half. As I said, they nearly got the 1-0. Moved on to Dundee and are thinking, right, this is an absolute must-win. Apart from the fact that results ended up going for them elsewhere, you're starting to, really off the back of a derby defeat, Dundee, fragile, local enough derby, huge game, and they just, the first goal you don't legislate for losing early goals, but they just played so cavalier. It was like they were sitting third or fourth in the league, and you attack, we attack. You don't have that luxury when you're at the bottom of the league for a reason in terms of quality of player, but also confidence. You're not in the confidence to go man for man at the back and always defend. And they've had issues with goalkeeping in terms of making saves. And I just couldn't understand the tactics at all.
Yeah, you're right. I think Simo Valakari said after the Hibs game that should, or he hoped anyway, that would sort of breed confidence, and it was certainly shot off within 2 minutes or so on Sunday. It is a sad slump though, Michael, for a side who brought so much joy, the magic of the cup runs, the wee European jaunts and whatnot. Where do you, they seem a lifetime ago actually now, where do you see that this mess that they find themselves in right now has stemmed from? Has this been something that has been brewing for a little while? There's obviously been a lot of change managerial wise, but also behind the scenes at St Johnstone. It very much is there is a lot going on off the park in Perth, but there seems to be a real lack of stuff actually going on it.
Yeah, it's felt pretty sterile on the pitch for quite a long time at St Johnstone. They've never really been a team recently that scored a lot of goals and just not given their fans very much in terms of entertainment. It would be a real shame if they go down. They're very much a Premiership team. They're part of the furniture of the Premiership. They've been up for 16 years. That is a real credit to the kind of way that club's been run. And it would be, I don't know if ironic is the right word, but when the Brown era has come to an end and they're under new ownership, they might fall out of the Premiership. Now, I suspect that if St Johnstone go out of the Premiership, they'll come back pretty quickly. The infrastructure and the size of the club, relatively speaking, is going to get them back into the top flight. But I don't really hold out any hope for them this season. It seemed to be quite revealing that the fans really turned on Valakari at the weekend for the first time, I think, and really just weren't having the kind of limpness of that collapse to Dundee. The rest of the bottom six is so tight. There's 3 points separating 5 teams, so I think Hearts and Hibs might possibly both end up in the top 6, But in terms of the rest of them, toss a coin. Throw a blanket over them all, frankly, and it's difficult to know who'll be in the playoff space. But I think St Johnstone are going to go down, I'm afraid.
It is so tight in that bottom 5 almost, because I think that's the problem, Stephen, isn't it? St Johnstone seem to have been dragged away really on their own. Ross County in recent years have sussed out how to crack the playoff code, but now it seems they've managed to crack the away game winning code as well. It's kind of like buses. They've waited well over a year for one, and now they all just seem to keep flooding by. How impressed have you been with the way that they have managed to turn things around and kind of do it under the radar? Yeah,
unbelievable. I think going to Rugby Park and winning in itself for what Derek McInnes and his Kilmarnock players have made that place, it's a huge result. But Yeah, big credit to Don Cowie, the manager, who stayed really calm. I mean, his tone, his forward thinking's never really changed. Whether they lose heavily, whether they have a big win, and it's something that I played with him earlier in my career, and he was someone who was an older player I looked to, and I was very emotional after games. I would get very low, very high, and he was someone that was brilliant at putting things into perspective, and I admired him for it, and he's continued that into his management career, and I think it's really refreshing sometimes as a manager, because sometimes I'm looking at him thinking, like, surely you look a little bit rattled now, you've just lost maybe 2-3 in the bounds, but he's really consistent. I think it's a brilliant quality to have in a manager.
I think if you have to say not rattled about any Scottish football manager in the top flight right now, it would be Don Cowie. He doesn't give anything away at all, Michael, does he?
No, he doesn't. I'm struggling with the idea that you've waited a year for a bus and then 3 come along at once.
I'm struggling out here in the East, I tell you, these Lothian buses, honestly.
No, Cowie, you're absolutely right, and it was interesting listening to Stephen as an ex-teammate, but he's a pretty unflappable character, Don, isn't he? And I kind of worried about him, should I say, for a bit, but I mean, we're talking about the ridiculousness of Aberdeen's season so far, this 16 unbeaten and now 10 without a win. I mean, Ross County is just as weird, isn't it, to go 15 months without an away win and now 3 in a row. I mean, how do you make any sense of that other than just confidence?
The only thing for Ross County, Michael, they're having to rebuild a team every summer. I mean, every time they kind of get a player and get a team going, they come and they cherry pick the 3 or 4 players, and you feel like not just Don Cowie, but any Ross County manager for the last few years have had to really rebuild the team, and that can happen sometimes as well, where it takes 3 or 4 months for a new team to gel.
You also wonder about you alluded to it there about the playoff thing. You almost wonder if that gives them a kind of level of confidence as well, that, well, listen, if we end up in the playoffs, we know how to do it, we know how to deal with it. So, maybe that is something that will help them if it gets to that and they do finish 11th, whereas other clubs might panic because it's new to them.
Yeah, it's a dangerous game to play, but they have certainly managed to crack it in recent years. Just finally wrapping up, a dangerous game to play as well, I think, for many in the bottom 6 was perhaps thinking that Hibs and Hearts might be down there come the end of the season. You kind of touched on it, Michael, but do you think that is both now very much turned a corner? That was a big win for Hearts at Tannadice. Hibs are on an incredible run given their start. Do you think they are both now on the lookout for top 6?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, Hearts they're only 4 points off it, and as you say, they've won a couple of games. They should have won at Ross County as well, but they lost 2 goals in stoppage time. You're never quite sure, because sometimes Hearts have these seasons where they just seem to get kind of stuck in quicksand and they can't get going. But they don't have Europe in the second half of the season, and I think Critchley's needed this little run in the last 2-3 games, but he's got it, And as for Hibs, I was impressed with Hibs in the derby. I thought it was the best they've played in a derby for a while that I've seen. And again, they made a point after the Rangers draw of saying that we might have lost, or probably would have lost this game quite recently, but now they've got that kind of resilience and a bit of belief. I think Hibs will be top 6, and I would not be at all surprised if Hearts join them. They're really within touching distance already.
Yeah, Martin Boyle said that some pretty honest conversations had been had in the Hibs dressing room. And speaking of honest conversations, I think we'll call quits on hour 1 here. My many thanks to Stephen McGinn and Michael Grant for joining me, and thank you for listening. Remember, we are here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day. So to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone.
Sir Alex Ferguson is the most successful British manager of all time.
Nobody is above him or this football club.
So how did an apprentice toolmaker from Glasgow become one of the most iconic figures in sporting history?
His strength of character, his determination, the fight in him.
He can be persuasive, he can be charming, he can be frightening.
I'm Kelly Cates, and this is Sporting Giants Sir Alex Ferguson.
I didn't want to feel, I couldn't feel.
Listen on BBC Sounds.